What else is there to do? Yeah, we're killing PoE. I actually don't really know what skill gems are really in the game nowadays. They haven't. It doesn't really matter how much they add, because it doesn't really change anything. But sometimes they add something that thematically fits something. Crackling lands. What the fuck is a link? This is like a multiplayer skill. And this is, they just added a Ragnarok linker. That's all they did. Just like attach chains to people and they get like some of your stats. Weird. Energy Blade. Grants a buff which significantly lowers your maximum energy shield to transform your equipped weapon into swords formed from that energy. Casting the spell again removes the buff. Requires a non-bow weapon. This skill cannot be triggered. Grants a buff that completely replaces your existing weapons. Okay. Cost of half your total energy shield. Note that the lightning damage granted is based on your current maximum energy shield, which takes the buff grants 50% less maximum energy shield modifier into account. Essentially giving you 50% of the energy shield you would have had with the buff off. Lightning damage gained this way is added to the energy blade's weapon as local weapon damage and thus can be used with Battle Mage. By default, a one-handed energy blade has blah 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 blah. The problem is, like, okay, I can do all this elaborate shit, equip this skill, link it with whatever it needs to have, and then I get like a lightning sword. But so what? Just use the normal sword. Like, what does this enable? Not much. It doesn't really change anything. The only thing it does is it lets you like shock with your sword. And you can just get lightning damage. Technically you could play like melee and have spells with it too, but like, I don't know. Like you could play an Inquisitor. You get 10% more attack damage for each non-instant spell you've cast in the past 8 seconds. Nearby enemies take 16% increased elemental damage. Just gives you more elemental damage and attack speed and stuff. Critical strikes ignore enemy monster elemental resistances. You can go for that if you want. This just means you have to cast... I wonder if this refreshes itself, so you only need to cast one spell every 8 seconds. Because in that case, I wonder if you can do Unleash. But I don't know if Unleash counts as casting at all. Unleash support is a support gem which causes the supported spell to generate seals while not being cast. The next time the user casts the spell will consume the seals it stored and cast the spell in rapid succession. Okay, so it still counts as a cast. Because this is like a pseudo cooldown. I kind of like this. But at the same time, it's kind of like whatever. A little bit. But what you can do is if you play this, you can have a melee skill that you go around and smack people with, and you can have a spell linked with Unleash. Just cast every now and then, just to keep that up. But what would you do? You could use Arc, you could have Ball Lightning. I mean, you can have a lot of stuff. Crackling Lands, how does that even work? Fires a wide beam that deals lightning damage. Go we Crackling Lands. It's so hard to find a reveal video. Trailer. But can't you go to Path of Exile? Me? Yeah, show me the Path of Exile channel. Please. Trending gear, okay. Lightning boots. See, I'm gonna assume that it didn't find anything. Because it's... I searched for crackling and there's not a single... Because I know that they usually put up videos, but... What does it look like? View. It's like a little laser beam. Could do that maybe. So ugly. Games should not revolve around having 5 attacks per second. Laser beam. Divine Ire is channeling, you can't use it with that. Eye of Winter, this is just... Galvanic Field? I don't know really what that's like. Either. Applies a buff boosting chance to shock. When you shock an enemy while you have this buff, creates a spherical field. Okay, so you get a buff that lasts for 6 seconds. That kind of weird. On a bond. Orb of Storms. Create stationary electric orb. Nah. Lightning Conduit. Strikes all shocked enemies around the target location. Then removes shock from those enemies. Well. Regardless, I don't really want to use this blade skill. Right. Stream starts in 13 minutes. I always liked Righteous Fire, but it sucks ass. I mean, it's really good, but it's only good if you just play Righteous Fire. And that's what I hate. Like, I don't want to just use one thing. But that's kind of what you do. You just... Righteous Fire does fire damage to you every second, and then you get an aura that does fire damage around you. Which is kind of cool, but... You also need, like, very specific builds for it. Because you need to out-regen the damage you take, right? But I think it's a lot easier now, probably. How would I make a meme RF build? That... Well, that one's super good. Have consecrated ground around you while stationary. Consecrated ground you create causes life regeneration to also recover energy shield for you and allies. 100% increased effect of consecrated ground you create. Do I care? Not really. Oh, so what you can get now, though. No, this isn't that. But you can get +1 to all maximum elemental resistances here. However, what I was thinking about was the one that's down here. There. There you can get +1 fire, and then you get +2 maximum. So for this build, I don't know, maybe we can just go down there. Grab it. Fire resistance. That way we got +4% maximum fire res. And we just got a little bit of health there. That's fine. Is there anything else we can get here? Because it's kind of a shitty route. There's this. 10% of physical damage as extra fire damage. Regenerate. Regenerate. Someone's gonna comment on... G not being strong enough. I don't really know how much regen you wouldn't want, though. Not exactly everything either. Elemental damage, spell damage, attack damage. Let's just take that. Go down here. Because I want that. Can we just go this path instead? Yeah. Save 1 point, I guess. Or maybe this is where we... Nah, we don't save points there. We want to go here, I imagine. But... because what I kind of like is going Wave of Conviction and... let's say... Infernal Blow. Because both of them do physical damage converted to fire damage. However, Wave of Conviction only converts 25% physical to fire. Added fire damage. Gains 39% of physical damage as extra fire damage. And I don't really want Unleash on it. Unleash sucks on this one. Like shoots out a wave, and if you have Unleash on it, it like resets the wave every single time. Exposure you inflict applies at least minus 18 to the afflict distance. Let's see, can you convert to fire damage? Yeah. Be able to do that here then. 40% of physical damage converted to fire damage. That should mean that for Infernal Blow, that's now we have 100% of physical damage converted to fire on Infernal Blow. While Wave of Conviction is still... well, that doesn't even convert. Oh yeah, it does convert. That's gonna be 65% of physical damage converted to fire. Oh, god damn it. That spell is really just supposed to buff Infernal Blow, I guess. But I don't really know what the best way to scale them is. Like, even if it's converted to physical, it should still scale with physical damage, right? Yeah. So I don't know if they just get added together additively, or if it's better to have like some physical damage. I don't know. They're showing off builds and stuff now. A lot of stuff. This isn't good. It's so stupid. Relic of the Path. What are you even doing? You're just floating. Oh, Sophia. Is this even using consecrated path or something? Like, how can you compete with this with like any kind of normal build? Like, it just doesn't make sense. That's just not how the game is played. And it's not even about competing with this. It's about being able to do the content without playing something like this. Like, you just can't do that. It doesn't make any sense. And playing a melee build is kind of like playing Terraria. They basically just made all melee skills be ranged skills. Because otherwise you just can't attack the enemies. Or the bosses. It's so ass.
I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Thanks for joining us for today's livestream as we reveal our upcoming expansion, The Forbidden Sanctum, which launches on December 9th on PC and Mac and on December 14th on console. Twitch drops are enabled on today's livestream, so make sure you follow the instructions below in order to claim your Bloodguard wings.
Wow, I need my Bloodguard
wings.
wings.
Expect from today's livestream. We'll start by debuting the trailer for The Forbidden Sanctum, and we'll then
Have to reload.
We'll then briefly cover some balance topics that we have posted articles about recently: jewels, curses, and the replacement of the arch-nemesis monster mod system. Finally, we'll discuss the upcoming release of the optional Ruthless game mode before touching on some quality of life improvements and the new supporter packs. The livestream concludes with a Q&A session between Ziggy D and me, where we'll answer questions from Twitch chat. Then we'll drop the full patch notes. Let's get started with a trailer for The Forbidden Sanctum, which launches in 1 week.
Many have met their fate here in the shade of Fell Shrine. So, step lightly.
Right,
For
pitch drops.
here you are bound by new rules. My rules. Each step with gold to tempt you. A foe to wound you. A curse to spite you. But do not give up, for vast riches await the bold. Pillage this sanctum if you must. And one day you may uncover its secrets.
That's not how you play the game. I hate the trailers because that's never, you don't play the game like that. I'm a little bit interested in what this Ruthless thing is. Because from what I was reading, it seems like they're trying to like reset the game. Hello, Stacy. How's it going? Or at least I hope. Yeah, I'm totally interested in custom designs and emotes for my channel. There are 10,000 times more female bots than there are women online.
Enclave, long rumored to be hidden beneath the Fell Shrine ruins. Abandoned for a long time, it is now controlled by a malevolent entity. In this league, you'll explore it, find out its secrets, and deal with the evil that lurks there. The Sanctum Challenge League is a roguelike game, played out one room at a time as you explore Rayclast and the Atlas in Path of Exile. In every area or map you enter, you can make a choice of which room in the Sanctum you will explore next. On the Sanctum map, you can see the contents of a few rooms ahead, enabling you to plot a path through its dangerous halls. And the Sanctum is dangerous. Like most roguelikes, you should not expect to be able to complete it on your first try. Getting to the deeper floors requires experience, knowledge, and luck. You should expect that your early attempts will fail, but over time, you'll be able to push yourself farther and farther. As you progress deeper into the Sanctum, you'll find a variety of treasures that will help you eventually fight your way to the dangers that await you at the end of its 4 floors. Eventually, by endgame, you may be able to push through all 4 floors to face the final boss. Every roguelike needs a resource to help you track how well the run is going. In the Forbidden Sanctum, it is your resolve, indicated by this bar here.
What?
As you explore the Sanctum, your resolve is threatened by the dangers within. When you lose all of your resolve, your Sanctum run ends. Your level of resolve is maintained between consecutive rooms on your run, but is only shown when you're in the Sanctum itself. The resolve mechanic applies equally to all build archetypes. Your resolve is reduced when you are hit by monsters or environmental hazards in the Sanctum, and these telegraphed attacks are not affected by regular Path of Exile defensive mechanics, such as evasion, armor, or block. While these attacks do some nominal damage to your regular life, the bulk of their impact is against your resolve. This mechanic provides a mechanism for tracking your progress between rooms, where your regular life pool would long ago have been recovered. Another aspect of the resolve system is that characters who are struggling can be ejected from the Sanctum without actually having to die, avoiding experience loss or hardcore death. So maintaining a healthy level of resolve is key as you navigate the Sanctum, and that means making careful choices of what rooms you enter. Let's have a look at some of the things that Sanctum rooms can contain. Afflicted rooms cause you to gain an affliction when you enter them. Afflictions make your Sanctum run more difficult, for example, reducing your resolve recovery, causing rewards to become hidden on the Sanctum map, or causing Sanctum rooms to spawn volatile anomalies that follow you. These minor afflictions accumulate as you get deeper and deeper into the run, making it more challenging. Major afflictions exist and are a big deal. They have significant consequences, such as entirely preventing the recovery of resolve. So, a Sanctum run gets harder and harder as you pick up more afflictions.
Almost died.
Sounds great. But every roguelike needs a way for you to gain power throughout your run. In the Forbidden Sanctum, that system is boons. Boons are beneficial buffs that help you as you progress through the Sanctum. Minor boons make things a little easier, such as slowing down monsters or adding a special shield to your resolve called Inspiration. Major boons don't come along often, but have large effects, such as preventing you from receiving more minor afflictions, or recovering your resolve to 50% the next time you run out. Due to the vast variety of afflictions and boons, no two runs are the same. Generally speaking, your best Sanctum runs are the ones where the afflictions you choose have little effect on you, and the boons either counteract them or have a large benefit for the strategy you're running. Some rooms in the Sanctum contain a fountain which will restore some of your lost resolve.
I'm a little bit wary about this when they make these like huge areas that you go through.
Contain chests full of the Templar Aureus currency, a type of gold coin they used for commerce within their Sanctum. You'll also find some Aureus coins from monsters that you kill as you explore. These are picked up automatically, like Azurite, and are not tradable, and like your afflictions and boons, are lost when your Sanctum run ends. Some rooms contain a merchant who accepts your Aureus coins in exchange
especially when it's
plan your purchases carefully, as you may encounter the merchant again later on.
when it's the current season and these like this is on every map.
Occasionally, the sinister powers controlling the Sanctum will present you with the choice of making an accursed pact. You are given several pacts to choose
gets
from,
kind
and
of
you
annoying
opt
in the
to
long
take
run.
all that you are offered. All pacts have a big
Like when it
upside and a
was,
big downside, such as exchanging a portion of your
Whatever
maximum
that was
resolve
called.
for a
Like
random
the
major
temple,
boon. It's very dangerous to make a pact, but if you pick
Temple
the right
League.
circumstances, your gamble
Going
will
into
pay
the
off.
temple over and over again.
In
It's such a
addition to
pain in the
rewards
ass.
that help you progress
Because
through
it's
the
just too
Sanctum,
long.
many
Takes
rooms
forever
let you
to
immediately
clear it.
receive
Takes
Path of
like an
Exile
hour.
currency items, but with a twist. Whenever you're offered some currency items that you can receive right away, you are also offered a more valuable option that will be waiting for you after the boss fight at the end of the current floor of the Sanctum. It's a gamble, because if you fail your run before you reach and defeat the boss, you will not receive the reward you picked. Later on, you're offered the extreme temptation of getting a massive currency reward that is conditional on completing your entire Sanctum run without failing. At a specific point in the Forbidden Sanctum storyline, you'll discover a special altar that Templar relics can be placed on. These relics directly affect your Sanctum runs and are not lost when a run ends. They persist throughout the League as a permanent source of meta progression. Acquiring new and better relics is one of the ways you can push farther and farther with each run you try. Relics cannot be crafted and cannot be traded, as they represent your personal progression throughout the League. You'll accumulate more than you can use simultaneously, so you'll have options to fine-tune your strategy from run to run. You can store your extra relics in the Relic Locker, a free storage space like the Expedition Locker. We don't want to spoil important story details, but the end boss of the Forbidden Sanctum can drop unique items from a pool exclusive to this league. Today we'd like to show you a unique amulet called Eternal Damnation. This amulet offers a powerful way to gain additional elemental mitigation by introducing the concept of elemental damage reduction. Despite the drawback of reducing your maximum resistances, if you have sufficient chaos resistance, this is more than compensated for. Because of the roguelike nature of the Forbidden Sanctum, defeating the boss of a floor is a difficult achievement and hence rewards a lot of experience. You may fail on the way, so if you do manage it, expect a good experience boost for your achievement. Another reward you can find is a special type of relic called a Sanctified Relic that has mods that directly affect your character's build. You can only unlock one slot for this type of relic, and while these relics can't be crafted through conventional means, you may find special reward rooms in the Sanctum that can modify them. These relics exist for this league only and provide a boost to character power for players who are able to master the Sanctum. The Sanctum League offers a roguelike experience that tempts you into taking risks and rewards you if those pay off. There's a lot to explore in the Sanctum, and we can't wait to hear about your experiences next week. In each expansion leading up to Path of Exile 2's release, we're improving Path of Exile's endgame, with new content to explore and improvements to how you customize your endgame experience. In the Forbidden Sanctum expansion, we're revamping the Atlas tree, reworking how Eldritch Altars function, and are introducing 2 new Atlas memories. The Atlas tree is generally working really well, but has a few problems we'd like to address. The tree offers you the ability to specialize in killing pinnacle bosses, providing extra rewards when you do so. While this sounds good on paper, it creates a situation where you're incentivized to specialize your tree for regular mapping, save up all of your boss fights, then respec fully into boss mode, and then do all of your saved up boss fights before speccing back again. Ideally, the design of the Atlas tree would let you spec into one build and then just play the game. We have removed all boss bonuses from the Atlas tree, and have baked some of them into the actual base properties of the boss fights. For example,
Yeah, this
you don't
fucking
need to
Atlas
allocate
tree,
the
holy
Gaze
shit.
into the Abyss notable that makes the Elder more likely to drop a Watcher's Eye, as he just has that drop chance built in now. The Atlas tree is now focused on allowing you to specialize into content that you encounter in every map. We also want you to be able to specialize into your favorite leagues even more deeply on the Atlas tree. For each of the 10 leagues that the tree lets you disable, we've added a bunch more passives to the tree. These new passives allow you to increase the league's spawn chance to much higher levels than currently possible, and juice the league even further than before. We are making a number of changes to Eldritch Altars that mostly affect their rewards, but will also affect gameplay decisions you make involving them. Some of the key changes include splitting up the basic currency, Scarab, and Divination card rewards to be explicit in their description of what rewards you'll get. For example, instead of map bosses dropping 3 unknown basic currency items, the altar specifically says which currency item they'll drop. As part of this change, we've removed some of the lower value yet quite common currency rewards from the pool, such as Orbs of Augmentation and Orbs of Transmutation. Speaking of Scarabs, these will be less available from altars, but we've improved their availability elsewhere to offset this. Rusted Scarabs can now drop from the core drop pool, and we've added a
What is
vendor
he
recipe
playing?
that allows you to upgrade your Scarabs up to Gilded using the normal 3-to-1 ratio. You can also perform this action from your Fragment tab using the new Upgrade button. We have made reward types exclusive to different influences, so that you know which influence type to invest in if you want to target farm a certain reward. To give you a specific example, if you run maps influenced by, say, Eater of Worlds, you'll see Divine Orbs from the basic currency reward more than twice as often as before. We've also rebalanced rewards so that choices that affect boss drops or influence monster drops are comparatively more valuable. The Wrath of the Cosmos keystone has been reworked. Previously, it was so rewarding that players felt obligated to use it despite its extreme level of difficulty. It has retained the risk versus reward element, but with the overall intensity toned down. You can now
That
also
risk
get awakened
versus
gems for
reward
defeating Maven
concept.
Witness map bosses. This additional reward helps further balance the expected returns from the various types of influence. For more detail on these changes, check out the Balance Manifesto we posted last week, or the upcoming patch notes. In the Lake of Calandra expansion, we introduced Atlas Memories. When applied to your Atlas, they unlock a sequence of maps that tells the story of an NPC's past. These stories manifest as specialized encounters that involve a new challenge and exciting rewards. In this expansion, we've introduced 2 new Atlas Memories, describing events related to Beastry and Domination. The Beastry memory line allows you to capture harvest monsters as beasts for your menagerie. These harvest beasts can be used in 9 new beast crafting recipes. These recipes cover an array of options. For example, you can remove one of the special modifiers from a Watcher's Eye Jewel and then add another. This can have potent results, but won't affect the life, mana, or energy shield modifiers. You can re-roll an awakened gem from one type to another. Another example is that you can also re-roll a Synthesis Implicit modifier. If your item has more than one Synthesis Implicit, it will randomly re-roll one of them. The Domination Atlas memory thrusts you into a tale of pantheon gods that stand watch over their shrines. Like regular shrines, these are guarded by monsters and emit a buff that empowers the monsters until you claim that buff for yourself. This Atlas memory introduces a new set of shrines with specialized buffs, guarded by rare monsters that drop tantalizing rewards. The Forbidden Sanctum expansion introduces a new type of shard that can drop from Harbingers, Fracturing Shards. When combined together into a full currency item, you get the Fracturing Orb, which behaves the same as the Fracturing Craft from Harvest. It can be used on any rare item with at least 4 modifiers. When the orb is applied, it locks one of the modifiers in place so that further crafting efforts do not affect that modifier.
Oh yeah.
Items fractured in this way can only have one fractured modifier. Previously, this crafting option was gated behind the Oshabi fight in Harvest. Now that it has been rehomed to Harbinger, the Harvest crafting option is no longer available. This means that you'll be able to use your Harvest Life Force and Oshabi kills on other crafts. Because Fracturing Shards drop from Harbingers, you'll be able to target farm them by speccing into Harbinger content on your Atlas tree.
Yeah, Harvest was basically mandatory.
Introduces a number of new skill gems. In addition to some new melee Val skills we'll discuss later in the livestream, there are two
Val
totally
skills?
new skills that we'd like to unveil today. Volcanic Fissure is a new fiery slam skill that can be used with staves, maces, axes, and unarmed attacks. Strike the ground to create a chasm that winds towards your target. This chasm can path around corners before erupting as the fissure gets as close as it can reach. It releases a burst of fiery projectiles that explode on striking the ground. Enemies hit by multiple impacts will take.
See what I'm saying about melee being ranged?
For reliable bursts of damage, or aim far away to damage a larger area. Frozen Legion is an unusual spell, summoning a ring of icy statues that attack with your own weapon damage. This skill has multiple cooldown stacks and consumes all cooldown uses at once to summon a statue for each available cooldown. The statues perform a sweeping ice slash, and these sweeps can overlap, resulting in multiple hits against targets close to you. This spell can be used with staves, maces, and axes. The skill is particularly powerful with slow, heavy weapons, as while the statues will use your attack speed, you should instead prioritize the spell's own cast time and cooldown. This expansion also introduces many new Val melee skills. As you know, equipping a Val skill gem grants
There
you both
hasn't
the
been a
Val
new
and
Val
regular
skill in
version of
like,
the skill.
I don't know
As
how
you
many
kill
years.
enemies, the gem charges up with their souls, and after a certain number are collected, the Val skill can be used once.
I thought it was
Most of the new
abandoned.
Val skills introduced in this expansion are melee skills, and this results in an indirect buff to
Do
any
you even-
melee builds that use one of these skills. Where previously you'd just be using your melee skill to kill enemies, you now get to periodically use a super-powered version of the skill. If you like Flicker Strike, you'll love Val Flicker Strike, as it really dials up the concept of letting fate take the wheel. Val Flicker Strike causes you to flicker dozens of extra times, slashing enemies. During this time, you don't deal any damage to the enemies you slash. You're quite vulnerable due to not leeching or generating fortify stacks. When you finish flickering, if you survived of course, you'll be rewarded with a single huge hit of damage against each enemy you slashed. Val Cleave is a new Val skill that buffs the behavior of its non-Val version, in a similar way to how Val Reeve works. Val Cleave triggers 2 buffs, one when you kill a rare enemy, and one when you kill either
Unfortunately,
a rare or unique enemy. The
They
latter
gave
is
it
a
like a
strong
really
buff
weird
for
animation.
which you
Like
can
you
keep up
summon
almost
some kind of
permanently if you're able
Reaper.
to kill rare or unique enemies
How do you
often
fit
enough.
that into any
The
kind
bonus
of
for killing a rare enemy is that you get to steal its mods for a time.
theme? Like that
You
doesn't
can enjoy
work.
part of the power of having a headhunter
Okay.
without actually needing to find one. Overall, Val Cleave is a pretty powerful upgrade to any melee build that could run Cleave. That +2 radius buff is looking pretty good now, right? Don't hurt me. We'll showcase the other new Val skills we're introducing over the coming week. The Forbidden Sanctum expansion introduces over 15 new unique items, from Sanctum exclusive uniques to ones that can be found from Path of Exile's pinnacle bosses. I'd like to show you 3 examples of these, designed by winners of our prior league's boss kill races. Progenesis is a unique amethyst flask that was designed by Ben and drops from the Uber Maven. It's a defensive flask that grants a mini version of the Petrified Blood effect, but without requiring you to be on low life. This is a useful tool to prevent you getting one-shot by large amounts of incoming damage in scary situations. Rational Doctrine is a unique jewel that was designed by Rawlings and drops from Uber Venarius. By manipulating your attributes, you can change how this jewel behaves. While the ideal dream outcome is that you manage to get your strength and intelligence tied for highest, enabling both of the benefits simultaneously, the jewel is still very powerful if it only grants your choice of permanent consecrated ground or permanent profane ground. Entropic Devastation is a pair of unique gloves that were designed by Gucci Pradas and dropped from the Uber Shaper. Currently, the ways to get Spell Impale are very limited. These gloves provide the powerful property of causing all of your spells to impale on crit. So let's talk about unique weapons, specifically endgame unique weapons. In many ways, the weapon is the most iconic and important item on a character, so it's very important that we make them exciting and worthy of their unique status. While some unique weapons have special properties that enable entirely new builds, others are best compared to powerful rare items as a primary source of your character's damage. We have to be very careful when pitching the power level of these unique weapons. If they're not powerful enough, then they're useless and are ignored, but if they're too powerful, then they discourage entire archetypes of characters from trying to find or craft rare weapons. Interestingly, the above problem doesn't apply to belts. Despite Mageblood and Headhunter both existing as extremely powerful unique items, people still craft plenty of rare belts. That's because Mageblood and Headhunter are extremely rare, and people don't actually expect they'll reliably get one in a league. Players tend to treat them as luxury upgrades to their build, rather than something they're certain to get. In this expansion, we're promoting 10 iconic but underused unique weapons to the same tier of rarity as Mageblood and Headhunter. We are buffing them a gigantic amount and are making them incredibly hard to find. Remember
That's
when
so
Starforge
fun!
used to be an exciting item? Well, after this change, it certainly is again. It still drops exclusively from the Shaper and the Uber Shaper, but it'll take a lot of runs or a lot of luck to earn it. Over the next week, we'll reveal
You
the
just
other unique
deleted a bunch of
weapons that we massively
uniques.
buffed.
Good job.
We have targeted around 10 iconic underused unique
Retard.
weapons and have generally buffed only their damage stat, but by a lot. We've made a number of changes to jewels that are covered in a recent balance manifesto.
This is
In
why I
case
kind
you
of
missed
hate
it, we
unique
want to quickly
items.
summarize what the changes are.
And I kind of
In the
wish it
Forbidden
was
Sanctum
just something
expansion,
else
we
on
have
the
made
side
jewels a better
that you
source
could
of ailment
equip
mitigation
somehow.
by buffing the values of ailment-focused jewel modifiers and adding new modifiers that enable mitigation to
Like
a
a
wider
gem
variety
or
of ailments
something
than
like
before.
that. But even
We've
then,
also
it would be
removed
kind
some
of
ailment
hard.
mitigation modifiers that were only available on jewels through corruption, because there are now better options through the regular jewel mod pool. This also means that other desirable corruption
But I don't think that they
modifiers, like
should
getting used
be
to corrupt
better
blood,
or
are more
worse.
likely to
They should
roll.
be balanced with
We want the moment of finding a unique jewel to be way more exciting than
a
it
top of the
currently is.
top of the
We've
line
added a
rare,
handful of
more or
new,
less.
very powerful unique jewels and have removed some old, less interesting ones. An example
Otherwise,
of
it
one of
makes no
these new
sense.
unique jewels is Fire Song, which propagates any modifiers to your ignite mitigation to other elemental ailments.
Like, why
If you're
have
able to
a
substantially
a
reduce
unique in the
duration
game
of
that's
ignite
just
swing,
like
then you can use
at
Fire Song
tier
to basically
5 when
shrug off
tier
any
6 is the
elemental
highest?
ailment. For full information about the
Like,
other
what's the
changes
point
to
of that?
unique jewels, check out the Balance Manifesto
Like,
post we made.
yeah,
recently.
congratulations, you got a
We've
mid
rebalanced
unique.
curses to make them stronger where they matter most against unique monsters and pinnacle bosses. We have buffed several Hex-related unique items and reworked unique items that previously interacted with Doom. To replace the Doomsday Keystone passive, we have brought back a version of an iconic curse-related keystone from the past. We've introduced some powerful new unique items that interact with hexes, which we'll reveal in the lead up to launch. For more details on changes to curses, check out the Balance Manifesto we posted recently, or the patch notes that will come out after the livestream concludes. When we first created the Arch-Nemesis monster mod system, our goal was to improve Path of Exile's outdated set of monster mods with new and interesting mechanics that have modern game balance. We feel that Arch-Nemesis did introduce a lot of interesting mechanics, but it unfortunately had several of its own problems. We have replaced Arch-Nemesis with a system that is more similar to the way monster mods worked in the past. The new monster mods are a lot simpler.
They gave up.
They now each do one thing and very clearly state what they do. Each encounter with a rare monster is now less complex and is easier to understand in the heat of combat compared to Arch-Nemesis. You'll still encounter challenging combinations of mods from time to time, but this emergent synergy will be rarer than it was under Arch-Nemesis. The goal is that combat is interesting and varied, with moments that get your heart racing, but without the frustrations of the Arch-Nemesis system. Let's talk about rewards. Under Arch-Nemesis, it often felt mandatory to bring in a magic find culling character to kill some monsters for you in order to
Biblio.
maximize your rewards. In the new system, we've added a significant pool of new rewards to rares, but the reward that is on the monster is hidden and not associated with a specific mod, so you don't know what kind of rewards you will get until you kill the monster. Rare monsters with more mods are more likely to have these special hidden reward bonuses. To find out more about other balance changes that are taking place in the Forbidden Sanctum, check out the patch notes, which will be available when the livestream ends. Over the last year or so, some of our senior developers have been tinkering with a more challenging way to play Path of Exile.
Let's watch this.
We've been publicly alpha testing this mode, known as Ruthless, for the last month, and are planning to make it available to anyone who's interested alongside the launch of the Forbidden Sanctum next week. Ruthless is an optional additional character flag like Hardcore or Solo Self-Found that completely changes how Path of Exile feels to play. Ruthless is a lot more difficult than regular Path of Exile, but it doesn't achieve this by making the monsters harder to kill. It instead focuses on reducing character power through extreme item scarcity, limited crafting, and many other changes such as support gems being drop only. We've posted an article about the philosophy and rules of Ruthless on pathofexile.com/ruthless. We plan to release this mode alongside the Forbidden Sanctum expansion in a week. In addition to being a character flag like Hardcore or Solo Self-Found, it's also available as a modifier for private leagues. To be clear, the Forbidden Sanctum League content can be played in Ruthless with appropriately balanced rewards. Ruthless is still very experimental during 320, and we won't be afraid to make mid-league balance changes to it during this experimental phase. Ruthless is not for everyone, but so far it has found a supportive and growing group of players who enjoy the additional challenge that it brings. If it sounds like something you're interested in, then try it out next time you're looking for a new way to enjoy Path of Exile. This expansion
Sounds
also
weird.
contains a number of small quality of life improvements. Some examples are
I'll probably do it
missiles
though.
can now be used by right-clicking them rather than taking them to Sin. On the player overhead life bar,
But I
the
don't know
energy
if
shield
I
bar is
like.
split into a separate
Oh,
bar. You
finally!
can now right
Finally!
customize Temple of Atsuatl to see its layout.
Did you
And
see
most
that?
importantly, beast crafting recipes that add mods to flasks now actually say what the mods do. We'll post more information about
He
these and
split
other quality
out
of
the
life
energy
improvements in the latest
shield into
release.
another bar, so now you can actually see
Today
your
we're launching
fucking
two new
health.
series of supporter packs, the Forge and Gemling packs. Each tier contains the pack's
That's
full
been an
face
issue
value and
since
points plus several exclusive microtransactions.
the beginning.
These packs will only be available for the duration of the Sanctum Challenge League and will leave the store forever in 3 months. As always, these microtransactions are entirely cosmetic and do not affect your character's progression or power. The Forge series of supporter packs contains
Oh no, I
six
played
exclusive
PoE
microtransactions.
for over 1,000 hours at least. Diablo 3
The
for
clockwork back attachment
1,500
ramps up
hours.
as you build a kill streak, building pressure and releasing it when your streak ends.
I just haven't played PoE in ages. I'm not happy. I'm relieved that they
Delirious
finally
Halo decoration
fixed
lets
the
you summon
stupid
delirium from
bullshit
your
thing.
hideout at will, complete with strange
That's
voices
literally
and
just
terrifying
adding another
operations.
little 10 pixel graphic above the current hotbar, or the current health bar.
The Forge Guard armor set summons a hammer and anvil so that everyone nearby can watch you craft.
Wow, that's so cool. I hate this. I hate the supporter packs.
The ethereal fusing effect turns your item linking attempts into a spectator sport. If you manage to hit a 6 link, people watching it even prompt you to
People
send a
buy
congratulatory message.
$120 supporter packs for this game every season, every league, every 3 months. And all it does is it gives you like auras
Summoning the
and
Crowstorm
some
portal
armors,
effect causes a
like
murder
armor
of crows
skins.
to erupt from the portal. The portal becomes dormant.
I know
if you are
plenty
too
of
far
people who
away
do
from it,
that.
causing the crows to take to the skies.
And it's so
The
overpriced.
High Templar weapon effect
Like,
smites
it-
the undead you
it-
fight
it's
and
not
scatters the
warranted.
souls of those you put to rest. The Gemling pack series also has 6
Maybe if it was
exclusive
$15 and you
microtransactions.
got all of this, it
The
would
beehive
be
weapon effect lets your weapon play host to
like
a
a-
swarm of
a-
angry bees,
a reasonable
which erupt from
price.
the hive whenever you hit an enemy with the weapon. Critical hits cause the hive to send out its best warriors. The Stampede Quicksilver Flask makes you the leader of your own personal rower herd. Activating the flask causes a host of ghostly rowers to charge alongside you. This is the Gemling Artificer armor set. It is inlaid with gems that match the gems you've socketed in your items. Crafting gems with gem cutters prisms, Val orbs, or regrading lenses visualizes the process for all to see. This armor set also includes alternate gem level up effects. Prospero's ring blesses you with a constant shower of coins, and it helps you
But
thank
that
those
whole
you traded
ruthless
with
thing,
for a hearty
it
fist
depends on what exactly it entails.
The
But
consuming
if
ooze
it's
head
just
bounces
like
alongside you and devours
items
corpses
are
in
more
your wake,
rare,
spitting out a tidy pile of bones.
is that really fun? Items are already
Finally,
too
this pack
rare.
allows you to reunite with Kadero Perandus, inviting him to your hideout as a
I don't know,
vendor.
man.
In addition to
Well,
buying items
we'll
from
try
you
it, I
and using
guess.
his connections to accept your divination cards,
And
he'll provide
especially,
commentary
like,
on
you
your
can only
goods,
get
equipment, and anything else he sees fit to judge you for.
Port gems from drops? Like, that makes no sense. You need those.
Kadero
You
has
you
hundreds of
literally
lines
need
of
those to
voice
play the
acting.
game. So, do you have to just farm? Like, you just have to stop and farm one area for like 400 years until you might like maybe get one of the 20,000 port gems?
These new packs are available right now at pathofexile.com/purchase. Purchases like these directly fund
These-
the ongoing
these are how
development
many
of Path of
support
Exile 1
gems
and 2, and we really appreciate your support.
that there are in the game.
Meanwhile,
So
the Knight and Rogue
you can
packs
only
leave the
get
store
these now
forever in 1 week,
from
so now's
farming.
your last chance to purchase them. The Calandra edition of
How are you
Turret's
going
Vault
to
Pass
get
is only available until the end of the Calandra League,
anything that
and
you
will
need,
be replaced
ever?
with a new set of unique items when the Forbidden
makes no
Sanctum
sense.
launches. By the way, we're hoping to film Season 11 of Build of the Week
Oh, we'll
once
do
the
it.
Forbidden
We'll do
Sanctum
it.
comes out.
We'll still do it.
If you want to submit your build for the season, share your build guide on
Might
the
as well
class
try
forums on
something new.
pathofexile.com. Next up, we've got the Q&A with Ziggy D. Once that ends, we'll post the full patch notes for the Forbidden
Hate the
Sanctum.
Q&As.
Over the next week,
Q&A
our
with
community
Ziggy
team will
Ds.
post the expansion's challenge rewards, information on how to update your item filters, all new and changed gems,
I
and
know.
information on how to prepare for launch.
I hate it.
On launch weekend, we
Like, I
expect to
I
release
felt
the
that
newest
way ever
rewards,
since
and
I
we'll
played
follow
League
up
of
with the new
Legends.
Kyrix Vault Pass in the days
Like,
after launch. Thanks
Just
for joining us and checking out the Forbidden
yeah,
Sanctum.
they are
We can't wait to join you in
leveraging
Raid
mentally
Blast
ill
on
people.
December 9th.
I
We'll begin
agree.
the Q&A shortly, so please get your questions
but-
ready in chat.
Even when Diablo was the thing, I would be fine buying like an expansion every now and then if it was, you know, bigger and worth getting. But even if that wasn't a thing, I would still not mind like paying a sub to play. Because they still need to make money to continue updating the game, right? They can't, like, they have to monetize it somehow. But I at least want an option to be able to enjoy all the things that they're making for the game without spending $1,200 every 3 months. Oh, it's $120, but still. Because it's
Good
absurd.
morning, Exiles, and welcome back for another Q&A session with none other than Chris Wilson. Good morning, Chris. Thank you for joining us once again.
Oh, thanks for being here as well.
And,
Very keen to
and it's
jump
also
into, chatting
detrimental.
about Forbidden Sanctum straight away. But as always, you folks can put your questions
Because
in the chat. And,
all the things that they make for the game doesn't exist unless you pay that much money. Because they keep making like 3D models, new cool swords, and like whatever. But they never ever make new models for the actual 3D
This is one perk of the job, but
for the actual items in the game.
They're games that fit within the idea of being an action RPG.
Oh, I can assure you the
the
PoE YouTuber community and Twitch community are very much
killing monsters, or even when you're fishing, you're killing
liberal.
monsters. Well,
Yeah,
the
there's
one where we pull
bit of an
monsters out of
agenda
the water.
there, Ziggy.
I was planning on pushing the fishing angle.
So that's when you get on the boat and have your fishing league, right?
And you like pull monsters out of the water, right? Like giant fish that you then battle with as they flop around on the deck.
But yeah, they don't make new 3D art for the gear that's in the
No
game,
drama.
so you always look like a fucking
How do you gain access?
big farmer,
to the,
no matter what
Forbidden
you have
Sanctum?
equipped.
So basically,
Not that you
every
would
area
see
you're playing
anything,
in has a portal
regardless.
that gives you access to it. It basically takes you to the next room that you're playing in the
Because the
sanctum.
camera angle and the art is so bad.
Ah, okay. So to clarify, then the sanctum's divided into rooms, each with their own encounter, and then floors with a boss at the end of each. And then there's the whole sanctum itself, which is multiple floors.
That's right. So the sanctum itself has 4 floors, each one guarded by a boss at the end, with the ultimate boss fight at the end of the 4th floor. And each of the floors has 8 rooms, and so a maximum length sanctum run would be 32 consecutive rooms, which you'd play out over potentially 32 maps. But it's worth emphasizing that, as with most roguelikes, you don't just install it and then happily play through to the end in one go. It's something that you get further and further with each run as you get better meta progression, as you learn more about it.
I don't really
and
want
as
to
you
play
have good
PoE that
versus
much.
bad runs.
I
But at
presume
the
it,
same
like,
time,
level
I do
scales to the
kinda
character
wanna
kind of as
play
you're
PoE a little
leveling
bit.
still, as
Yes.
per regular leagues. Is there
Oh,
any potential?
I
do you
just
think, that
want
someone who's
good
like
games.
quite good at the game maybe gets through on their first try, or is this quite definitely you're gonna have to make it a bit further each time?
We never underestimate the players, right? Like we
Yeah.
will try as hard as we can to achieve something, and then players will just blow right past that because there are millions of them and they're pretty damn good at the game. So I don't want to make any promises there, but It certainly is the case that in order to get really deep into the Sanctum, you have to know a lot about it. You have to have some experience with it. You have
will
to
do it.
ideally have a good character with a capable build. You'd ideally have a good setup of your relics, which are the meta progression. To get to the deeper floors, it certainly requires that you've assembled relics that fit with your strategy. And it also helps to be having a good run. I can't emphasize that enough. It's very roguelike, where you're picking up these random boons, these random afflictions. And if you get the bad afflictions on you early on, that run is not going to last long. If you get a really good set of boons, you could have a really deep run, much further than you otherwise would at your current level.
This is so you mentioned like 30 something rooms. That's like the biggest thing we've had by a pretty substantial margin. Because even building the
Now, when
temple
you-
was around 11 maps to build a full temple.
He's
and then
right.
run
Like
that.
when
That
you're
was,
making a game
that's
like
pretty
this,
sizable
you
thing.
have
This
to
is a lot
design
bigger
it
than
for
that.
like the
That's
the
true,
upper
but
mid
a lot of the rewards
tier
you can
player.
end up getting along the way. And
Because
so it's
there
entirely
are
fine to
some
play the
people
Sanctum
who
a few floors in and then
well,
fail
this
and
game
play
is
again, and
incredibly
it's still a
badly
rewarding
balanced,
experience,
so
assuming you don't
it doesn't
gamble on
really
pushing
apply.
the rewards right to the end of the entire Sanctum
But
run. But it's unlikely you're going to choose to do that until you are really
there
confident
are
in
just
your
people
ability
who are
to do this run
super
to fully
insanely
well.
autistic,
Yeah, so I saw the reward.
and they're gonna
options
be
were,
like,
take a tiny
"No, the
reward
hardest
now,
content
like
is
a
super easy,"
decent
and here
reward
I
at
am.
the end
I
of the
am.
floor, so
You know, I
I
played
can make it 3 or 4
ARPGs
rooms.
for
And then there's the
10,
runes
like,
at the end as well.
thousands
and
of
there's a
hours,
right if you get a bunch of
and I
them.
still don't even
That's
get
right,
close.
and it was kind of funny because in the live stream I said this is a massive reward, and we're showing like a few chaos orbs as the reward. So of course, chat memed that as much as they could. The thing is, okay, so let's do some math here, right? It's 32.
I mean, that's what he
32
meant.
rooms in a Sanctum run, and deferrals make up something like 40%. Deferral is what I'm internally calling the offer reward here. It makes up around 40% of the rooms. And
Wow.
so if you're offered an average of a whole bunch of chaos orbs, I think the example there had like 18, but obviously the currency numbers will vary a lot, then and you were to defer those entirely to the end of the Sanctum run, you would be getting hundreds of currency, and it can have divines, mirrors, and various
How
other
should
stuff. on
they
top of
can't deal
reality.
with
So
it?
it's entirely possible that were you to defer everything to the end in a big gamble, you could receive a very, very large payout. Now, of course, deferring it to the end of the Sanctum is a crazy strategy. We don't recommend that. It will end in tears. Only do this
Especially
if you're
not here,
confident
because
in
this is
run.
not a
It's
skill-based game.
set up so that the rewards for immediately
This is a
taking it are still
numbers-
worthwhile.
number
If you play
game.
the Sanctum and just took the reward immediately,
But,
it's a decent
yeah.
amount of currency that makes it worthwhile. On top of the
They
other
could make
rewards
a
you
new
get.
game that's actually
But
skill-based.
there's always the temptation of the end of the floor. The floor one is the one that's juiced a little bit. Of course, in later floors, the end of the Sanctum doesn't look very far away. And if you know you're having a good run, you've got confidence, then why not take the extra reward by doing the big gamble?
This deferral mechanic's super interesting actually, because you've designed leagues where you get like some reward immediately, and then you've designed leagues where you do like a lot of content and then get a ton of rewards all at once. So but this allows players to have control over that mechanic and make that decision
Right.
for themselves. But
And
have
this
you
is-
like kind of? Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, this is because roguelikes have good runs and bad runs. If you're having a bad run, take the rewards
Right.
now and get as far as you can. If you're having a great run, that gives you the ability to make an ultimatum like gamble.
Yeah, right. You can make those strategic decisions kind of based on like, this has been a brutal slog. I am no way am I getting through this. I'm gonna check out now. Got it. Makes sense. Have you thought about like the player mindset of just like, I always gonna take the big one? Because I look at it and I'm like, I'm always gonna take the one, and I'm the biggest one. I'm never gonna get it because I'm always gonna die.
Obviously, players want to min-max stuff. They want to get the best result, but the best result may pragmatically say, I'm going to take this reward that's in a shorter time frame. Plus, okay, so anyone who's done economics or finance understands the concept of the time value of money. $1 now is worth more than $1 later because you can put it to use right now. And when these full Sanctum runs taking 30 maps, maybe getting a pile of Chaoses, potentially some higher currency like Exalts and Divines, a few maps from now is actually better for your character development than getting a very large pile in 20 maps. Maybe, especially when there's a conditional element to that. It may be that getting something a few maps from now that you can then trade to get more progression is actually better for you. So there are a lot of hard decisions which we put on the table here for the players.
Damn,
God,
I'm gonna have
trading
to
is so
dig out my
retarded.
Old economics textbooks.
Makes no
Path of
sense.
Exile, right?
Yeah, now you're speaking our language. Let's talk the resolve mechanic. So to clarify, resolve is an independent health bar for the
Yes.
Forbidden Sanctum specifically, and when your resolve runs out, you're kicked out of the Sanctum, dead or not, right?
That's correct. Now, I noticed the reaction when we're announcing the resolve system there, as a lot of players said, why? As though this is a negative thing, but I want to have a chance to explain it. So we tried very hard initially to work out a system here that works with your player life. Then there's no additional bars. The problem is, though, Path of Exile's player life fluctuates up and down rapidly. You're constantly healing yourself. You've got recovery. There's no persistence to this. Your player life is like how out of breath you are, if you see what I mean. It's a very brief. It's almost like your heartbeat to some extent. And so if we were to say, look, if you lose some life in this room, then when you come back into the next room, that life is going to be missing. So you've got a kind of a progression through the sanctum. Then they just press 1 and heal themselves fully and carry on playing. And so our experiments where there's no meta progression in it do not function as a roguelike. There has to be a thing where you get worn down. Having said that, half of the plan here, half of the strategy you have to do in your sanctum is work out how you are recovering your resolve. And there are lots of different ways. It's along the lines, I mean, it's as simple as if your resolve is lower than you'd like because the sanctum one is one you're struggling with, then you have to start pathing through various things like fountains or choosing boons which enable more resolve recovery. And every time you have to choose something focusing on resolve recovery, you're implicitly losing some other thing you could be getting, like more rewards or a different axis of power. And so the degree to which you're struggling with the run forces you to focus on
Did I
staying
get my
alive and
wings
not
yet?
getting rewards. But conversely, this means if you're having a good run where you are not struggling at all, you can just kind of ignore your resolve and focus on becoming super powerful. And this works really well as a roguelike. And I would really encourage people to try it out before judging it based on the fact that it's an additional life bar. We don't add those kind of things, for no reason. And it means as well that you don't have as much pressure on your actual player life. And it's very
86%.
interesting how build agnostic this is because it creates a situation where different Path of Exile players can experience the Sanctum in similar ways, despite the fact their builds play quite differently.
This is why this Q&A is super good to do, because you get a chance to explain this, like how you arrived at this design decision that you can't really do in the reveal, because it would
It'll
bog
take a
down
while.
the reveal for like 10 minutes. So that's super interesting. You actually touched on a topic I wanted to ask. So Resolve seems to reward high mobility play styles that can completely avoid attacks. So since mitigation doesn't affect resolve damage, how does it feel playing like a low mobility tanky melee character in the Sanctum when you kind of just be failing runs due to chip damage that otherwise is not a threat to you?
We thought of that. So we've made it so that the resolve damage is lower if you're close to a target. Essentially, if you're melee and you're right in their face, then you take less resolve damage than if you're further away. And so attacks are also very telegraphed. And that means that even if you're a tanky melee character, you have an opportunity to get out of the way. You probably
No such thing
should
as a
consider
tanky
at
melee
least
character
Quicksilver
in this
Flask
game.
if you're going into the Sanctum so that you have some ability to respond to stuff, but that's normal Path of Exile play. Even in Ruthless, where there's significantly less mobility skills, Quicksilver Flask still exist. The other thing is, if your build is one where you're expecting to take a lot of resolve damage, just spec your relics into resolve recovery. Relics are your meta progression that you can choose. They're locked in for the Sanctum run, and you keep them between runs. So if you feel that you want more resolve recovery, get relics that do that. And if you're a character that's given up mobility, has some ability at the expense of maybe less damage or less tankiness or something, then there are other things they can specialize their relics into if they have enough resolve.
That taking less damage at close range thing is super interesting. Is that like kind of a fast shot mechanic applied to projectile attacks or something?
It's like that for all of the resolve stuff, and this is
Ah.
something that we've realized is necessary because the melee and tanky characters get up close, and so it's better for that to be balanced around it.
All right, cool. And just to clarify for people, if you are playing hardcore, this means you can fail the Sanctum without dying. So I was like, I thought it
That's
was a very
correct.
hardcore league.
Right. The intention of the Forbidden Sanctum is that you will fail your Sanctum many, many times on the path to finding all of the good stuff in it. And so if that meant the hardcore character was dead and had to start again, it just wouldn't be a hardcore compatible league. And
Yep.
so a side effect of Resolve is that hardcore characters can actually engage with it without putting themselves in mortal danger. It also means, of course, with the way that experience penalties work, high level characters can play without putting their current experience so much on the line. I mean, it's still very, I mean, I've died in the Sanctum numerous occasions with legitimate player life deaths because I was careless, but
Mm.
it's certainly easier from a player life point of view than, say, high
There are two
level
of them.
mapping is.
Well, that kind of speaks to the concept of Resolve as a whole. It's Resolve is about your how well you've done over the course of the entire dungeon, whereas your health is how well you've done in this specific engagement, which is
Yeah.
an interesting kind of like two-faceted approach that we don't normally have in Path of Exile. Like if you
That's
do bad
correct.
at the start of a map, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the rest of the map, right?
Yeah, and it's also meant that if we want something to be dangerous, we up the resolve a bit. We don't up its damage, threatening the actual characters.
Interesting.
I mean, you can still
Cool.
die.
All right.
Of
So
course.
to clarify on the sanctified relics, these are the
Mhm.
ones where the effects work on your character outside of the sanctum.
Dying
That's
isn't the
correct, yeah,
only
both
way to
inside
lose.
and
That's what they
outside.
mean.
So these are a permanent power progression for characters. They're hard to get. They're very end game. You know, we're talking late maps here, and they're obviously due to the fact that they can't be crafted and can't be traded means that you are very limited in how many of these you get access to. but they are very powerful. And because of the fact that they can't be crafted or traded, we've made sure to juice the mods on them and make sure it's not watered down. These are relics which will significantly affect the character power of your build. Now, they are shared among all the characters on your account, or meaning you can equip, from the same pool. So it does mean that if you find one for one character and you want to use it on a different build, it's entirely possible to.
Very cool. How does the Sanctum work in a party then?
Okay. Got a bunch of rules here. Short answer is, as with all recent leagues, we want party play to work, but we also want it so that people don't feel encouraged to cheese things through party play. And so the philosophy basically is, like, one of the problems with Arch Nemesis with the whole culling situation is that players realize when they find a certain monster that, oh, I now have to engage with other humans in order to get maximum result here. And we want Sanctum to work in a party without creating the feeling that you have to engage with humans in order to get the best out of your Sanctum. It shouldn't feel like you only want to go in there when you have a whole bunch of friends who are online at the same time. So we've come up with rules that enable you to play as a party, and certainly there are some benefits for doing so, but there is also some liability to it. And so the way it works is the Sanctum is always that of the map owner. The person who created the map is the one whose Sanctum you are playing. So if Ziggy and I are playing and we're doing Ziggy's Sanctum, he's the one getting the progress for that. I'm there to help, and afterwards it would be nice if he reciprocated and we did my Sanctum as well, but it's primarily your one that's progressing. And so this means that you are the one who makes the choices about stuff. This is the one, it's your relics matter there. We're using your gold, your boons, your afflictions, and your resolve bar. That's the important thing to note. If you invite other party members into your Sanctum with you, they don't just get a free ability to have their own resolve bar, which doesn't matter, or they can run around and distract the monsters. You are, as a party, sharing the resolve bar with the map owner. And this means that extra party members can't just go and suicide themselves on stuff to distract the monsters. They actually have to be playing properly. Party member deaths do not
Drop is
end the
done.
current run, so if they happen to die legitimately, that doesn't screw up what you're doing. There's a bunch of other small rules there, like party members can view the merchant and view the map, but only the map owner actually makes the choices and purchases stuff. In practice, what this means is it's fun to bring people in and play together. It does give you a small advantage from a combat point of view if you have multiple players, but you do all have to be playing cohesively, so only bring in party members you trust. You can also drop party members in and out, so by that I mean, I can play this room with Ziggy and the next one with someone else, and because it's sharing my resources, that's compatible without having to have like a party resolve bar that's reserved for a specific group of people and so on.
All right. So if I bring a viewer in and they want to sabotage me, they can run in front of all the monsters.
Yep.
Great.
That would be hilarious. You guys should do that.
Please. Please. Okay. We got a couple of chat questions on the mechanics here specifically as well. Also, I just wanted to add another one. When you die,
This was still super
in
long
Sanctum
week.
via resolve death,
Yes.
and your character flops on the ground like a fish.
Mm.
Are you fully protected from taking any damage from any source, dots, anything like that? You guys have checked, right?
Yes. I checked this yesterday. The list of things you are like, I'll read it to you. Cannot be damaged. Minions take no actions. You have grace period. Dealt no damage. Minions have no damage. Minions cannot be damaged. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Good.
You're
Okay,
protected.
cool. Excellent. Just had to make 100%
Did I
sure
though?
we didn't want
It
any
feels
people
like I'm just back where I
fell into the
started.
Sanctum and then I died when I couldn't control
But
my
yeah,
character.
that's
So,
why I hate working on this,
excellent.
because it doesn't feel like I'm much
losing
further than I
resolve
was
death, TK
a year ago,
asks,
when
is
I
your XP
finally
lost,
got
or
it
is your XP
to
protected?
render, like
My
just
belief
being
is-
able to walk into the buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
that
feel
was
like
the
I'm much
check.
further than that.
You don't lose
still.
experience if you fail out through to resolve, and that's because it isn't actually a death. It doesn't increase the deaths count. You don't
Oh,
lose
dog
experience.
shit.
You don't lose hardcore characters. It's entirely basically fainting and being ejected.
Gotcha. Malik asks, do we need to interact with the league mechanic every zone, or can we somehow build them up or save them to run them all at once?
You do interact with it in every zone, and it's not a particularly long encounter. These aren't very large rooms, but yes, you should interact with every zone.
Yeah, sometimes you would probably just portal in and click a fountain and leave, right? And then go back to your map?
The structure is that every room. So the basic way it works is you take the
Last
portal and
year's
you
work
appear
was
in a
much
small
more
energy
torture
chamber, which
for you.
enables you to make a choice. You click on
Mm.
the map, have a look at what the options are of where you want to go next. You can look a few
For me,
ahead,
it was for
and
sure.
you lock in a choice, and then a door, one of the
Holy
3
shit.
doors, or up to 3 doors in that room slides open. So you go through. Now you're in the actual main sanctum room. So you do whatever the objective is in there, which may be just getting to the exit or killing the guards or whatever. And this is not designed to take long. It's meant to not interrupt your mapping from a pace point of view. And then you end up in the reward room. every room has.
I'm
a
sitting
reward,
like a-
and these vary from all the things we've talked about. You know, fountains, affliction fountains, merchant,
These
treasure room, and so
doodles.
on, or the offer one, which is the item deferral, and a whole bunch of other. I should add, there are a lot of other reward rooms we haven't shown.
The worst thing was that I was sick at the same time. I was super sick.
In the announcement. And so after you've done that,
Still
you
am,
arrive
but
into the
it's a
management
lot
plan,
better.
And so it's a relatively quick process and does improve your sanctum progress or give you some actual currency with each room you play.
Yeah, for some behind the scenes insight here. For this one, we were specifically like, let's try and avoid
Oh my God,
spoilers as
we
much
get
as
it.
possible for like the things.
Talk
you can
about Ruthless.
discover
It's the
and
only thing that's
so
new that's
there's a bit of a
And
at all
discovery
interesting.
process there.
There's a lot of discovery and there's quite a lot of story as well. Like there's an actual reason why the sanctum is,
Cool.
got this bad person in there and what's going on with that. But we'd much prefer people actually enjoy that rather than us dumping it all.
I have to sit down with
Lost
Kibbs
to
and just
under
go
its
through
own
the entire code with him
gas.
so he understands just how
Ooh,
fucking
lots.
much bullshit
I was thinking
I've done in there.
or something.
It's
Very good.
insane.
Official Arrow asks, do totems, when they take damage, lose your resolve? And I'll tack onto that minions as well. Check.
No, they do not.
Great. Excellent. Does self
I love it.
damage
Yeah,
affect
whenever
yourself?
they do these, they have
It
some
does.
questions for him.
There's a lot of shrugging.
He always has one
only-
guy
It's
who
only
is
damage that's
actually the game
tracking
designer.
affecting your
Like,
resolve,
Wilson
once
doesn't
from
do that.
monsters. There are
He's the
some,
CEO.
let's say,
But he
environmental
has one
hazards in
guy
the
next to
setting.
him
You can
who's-
see it briefly in some of the footage of some, like, big
But every
bubble
time there's a
flying
question,
around
he's
the sun
just-
and that kind of thing. An object in the middle of the room that's
Not
firing out
even
laser
wasted.
beams that rotates, for example. That stuff will hit your resolve. But it's really telegraphed. Like, it's very easy for people to deal with.
Well, there you go. That answers Monkedota's question as well. So we'll move on to the next topic, which is endgame changes. So the need to swap between bossing and mapping in the Atlas trees was definitely something that felt awkward. So I'm pretty excited to learn a bit more about that change. Many of the nodes have been rolled into the game as default now for bossing. But are there any passives that remain on the Atlas tree for bossing?
It's kind of weird because bossing,
I'm guessing there are still nodes, for example, to enable the.
it
Uber
feels like
versions of the
that's what
various
you want to
bosses,
do, right?
At least.
Yes,
But
there are
bossing in
open nodes
PoE
still,
is
so
like
if you
the
want to
worst
play
thing.
in
Like,
fights, you can allocate
it
the
sucks
passive,
so
but
hard.
thankfully that's a very small investment that you wouldn't do particularly often. And the main problem, which is where you feel like you have to fully spec into bosses and then fully unspec back.
You
into
have to
mapping,
know
which is a large
exactly how
investment,
strong the bosses are, because
is
it doesn't make
not
any
there
sense.
anymore.
Like, you
It's
can
worth
go
noting that
around
kind
and
of
have
people
no
that don't
problem
go
with the
to
map.
local farming
You
can
destroy
afford
the map
progress
boss,
to flick a passive
and then
on
you
or
go
off
and
from time to time.
fight like a real
But
boss.
basically, the
And
plan
that
is that you
boss
can play
just
bosses at any
insta-kills you.
time without feeling like you have to respec your trio.
That's why I hate this game. Like,
mean,
that's
it's
the
also
main
important
reason.
to
I
note
could
that
live with
Ubers
everything
are not
else.
The default bosses now.
But the damage versus
Very
like
good.
your
Some of the
survivability
allocatable
is
boss
just
nodes make
it's
things
just
more challenging,
ridiculously
and
bad.
more rewarding. So, for example, Inevitable Ambush, which added a second Guardian to the Guardian.
Because you
class.
can't outplay it.
Are
Like, you
things
just
this
have
maybe
to be
default
like
behavior
tank
now,
it
or are
and
they
just
still
be
passives,
stronger
or are they just gone?
The ones that add extra challenge and rewards are gone.
than what
for
the boss
now,
is
but
doing.
This isn't a we don't like them, they're gone forever. It's a case that we want to bring them back in some form. And we have some plans for this. They probably won't be an at 320 release, but we do have some cool ways where basically the ability to opt in to the challenge and reward is not going to come from the tree because that creates the problems we've discussed, but it will come from somewhere. And so players will be able to get their challenge and reward.
In
back
Diablo
from this.
3,
But in the
you
meantime,
regen like
obviously, there's
half
still a
your
lot of ways
health.
You can ramp up the
Or at least a
boost and
third of your
challenge from
health.
these encounters.
Like every second.
Jack
Here
was
it's more
wondering
like you
if,
regen
Atlas Tree
5%
will be viewable today alongside patch
if you're
notes, or is that
speccing
a
into
little
it.
bit later, maybe?
I don't think it's today, but our expectation is to release
And
it
that's
before
that's
release, so
why
you do get a
the
chance to
second
play
something
around.
starts spiking you down, you just
Okay,
die instantly.
Reign of
Because
Pain Games
the-
asks, there was mention of boss nodes being
the
moved against
regeneration
us
and,
to
like,
bosses directly. To
just
avoid what
how-
happened
how
last week
much
with
you
Blue, are there
can
any number changes happening
sustain.
with the modifiers
It's just not there.
that are worth
I'm
mentioning?
unaware of any. I mean,
Compared to
we've
how
tried very
heavily
hard to
enemies will
communicate
just
everything as
spike you
clearly as
down
we
to
can in the
zero
patch
health.
notes. I mean, I can't promise we haven't missed anything, but we have scoured stuff in order to try to make sure it's complete. And also,
But there is a hard
based on this kind of stuff. So we are trying very hard to disclose
balance
any
there,
small changes like that.
because
which
it's
would have an
like-
impact. I'm not aware of any stuff we haven't
In
spoken
Diablo
about.
3, it's a little bit,
Let's talk a bit about rare monsters.
so not
I feel a lot of
entirely,
players are
but
very
it's a little
happy
bit to the
read
point where
Manifesto
the only
about,
thing
like,
that can kill you
replacements
is a big,
of the arch nemesis system
know,
for rare
something that will
monsters
kill
with
you
a
in one hit,
new,
pretty
more,
much.
I guess, nemesis-like system.
But
do you
it's
think that
not
this new system
entirely
will
true.
Still achieve the goals that you set out to achieve with
It's
Arch
just you
Nemesis?
still have like laser beams
So
that you're avoiding
the goal
and
of Arch Nemesis initially was modernization
ice that's freezing
of the
you and
effects
shit.
balance. We felt that the old monster mods.
Diablo
were
3 is
just
a
really
lot
old,
more
we just
skill-based than
basically
this
needed to
game,
give them a fresh coat of paint.
to be
Now, a
honest.
fresh coat of paint included some stuff that players didn't like, and so we're trying very hard to make sure the new system does achieve the core goals of Arch Nemesis without having the things that people didn't like. And so to that effect, it now does use modern effects. There's a lot of cool stuff that we weren't doing with the system that was 2 systems ago, and the balance is appropriate for current Path of Exile. So it's definitely ticked those boxes, but at the same time, it's trying to be much more understandable and simple and a bit less in your face than Arch Nemesis was.
On a very kind of just like rough feelings basis, how do you think like an old Arch Nemesis compares to a new rare monster on average?
My impression so far is that the monsters are on average a bit easier, but the key thing is this. A previous Arch Nemesis mod had a grab bag of stuff that it did. It generally made the monster do more damage in a generic sense. It also had an interesting thing that happened gameplay-wise, and it added a bunch of defensive properties, and often more, often on multiple axes. And so it cohesively had a kind of a, this is a fire, it's going to screw you up with fire in 4 different ways kind of theme. And so therefore it applied to pretty much any character, right? It would have some way of interacting with them. The new mods are very simple. The new mods say, cool, you're not going to be able to do much fire damage to me, or I'm going to do a lot of fire damage to you, or I have a magma barrier. They just do one thing. And therefore, they're very, let's just say, Boolean against certain players. I'll give an example. Let's say you run into a rare monster with 2 mods, and those 2 mods are that it will blind you and that it's resistant to fire damage. So if you're playing a cold caster, neither of those mods affects you whatsoever. They're literally nothing. And so you can kill a monster easily and it doesn't do anything extra to you. Great. And on average, you're often encountering this. But if you're playing a fire melee character, it blinds you, which is going to affect your accuracy, and the fire damage is going to be mitigated against it. This
It doesn't
will be a hard
matter.
fight. It will wake you up a bit when you encounter it. And so you're going to find this situation where a lot more monsters are just speed bumps along the way and aren't causing a problem. And sometimes there'll be one which causes you issues because of your build.
It doesn't do anything. Like, it's just passive bullshit.
But overall,
like, okay,
the monsters are at a glance
this
much
monster is
simpler in
going to
terms of what they
blind
do,
you.
And you're not encountering the onerous,
Like, what does
long,
that
frustrating
mean?
fights
That
every single
literally,
area like you were before.
they have those kind of things for everything. Like, they've got, you know, you can get stunned, and you can get frozen, and you can get this and that.
You feel clever.
And the only thing it boils down to is which hole do you have to plug and how. Because it's like, if you're playing a melee character, it's really easy to not get stunned, because it's based on your health, and there are nodes that just make you immune to stun.
Color coding the new modifiers and
But you can't evade. But if you're playing
using other systems like
an armored character, like, you're not evading anyway, so you just pick that and then you can't get stunned. But then you can still get frozen, for example, and
see what a monster does based on what it looks like. But otherwise, what we focused on here is to succinctly and completely describe.
But that's really all it is. It's just like, you're gonna run into some enemy that's gonna have some effect that's gonna fucking one-shot you.
What does that mean?
Frozen does that. If you get frozen, you just die. If you don't have something that gets rid of frozen, you're just dead. It's game over.
It may not be a good
And it's not that you avoid the frozen or anything like that. It's literally just, do you have a bottle that removes and make you immune to frozen? So if you see an enemy that can freeze you, or if you notice that you get frozen, you can instantly unfreeze you. Either that or you become immune to frozen.
That was something which went with the keywords in Arch
And
Nemesis.
it's like, bleed is the same, and it's the same with what he just said. Like, oh, there's gonna be an enemy that
clear, so that you can easily identify them while you're playing. That's really useful. Have a go. We're open to
like, there's gonna be an enemy that can blind you, and it's resistant to fire damage. Like, that's just gonna be the same. And if you can't get rid of blind, because there isn't a thing that gets rid of blind, as far as I know, it's literally just gonna be you do less damage against this monster, and that's the whole mechanic of the monster. So it might as well not have anything. They might as well just have more health, because it doesn't matter. Like, it literally is just like a knowledge tripwire for people. Like, you just have to know that monsters are gonna freeze you, and that you have to have flasks that are gonna get rid of that. You have to know that they're gonna bleed you. You have to know that this and that and this and that. And you just have to know how to preemptively be immune to it. Or you die. And it's just not, it doesn't make any sense. But that's what I'm saying. Like, this game is Diablo 2, and Diablo 2 is a garbage game mechanically. Like, sure, if you enjoy the story or the art or the music and just like walking around, fine, but
the unfamiliar, the loot
it
conversion
doesn't
system
have
takes
proper
what
gameplay.
a monster would usually drop and converts it into
And there's just nothing you can do
currency for
in
it.
it that's like actually skill based, except
So
like have a
we
monster that
reviewed the
explodes when it
conversion
dies, and that's what they do.
added some new ones, dropped some old ones, like the ones that just gave you power.
That's exactly how Diablo 2 works
As
too.
far as I know, that doesn't exist anymore. And we've gone through and made sure to use the feedback that people have had. The special. So the way it works is rare monsters drop more items than regular monsters.
The only
By
monsters that
itself,
have
that should be
mechanics in
a bit
Diablo 2
more. We
are
want it to be interesting, and we want people
enemies
to
that
feel like they're
explode,
really, that there's an extra
enemies that
reason to kill
shoot
rare monsters.
inferno on you, so you have to walk out of the
And so
fire,
you basically
or
have these
enemies
bonus
that
drops that can occur.
put
Bonus drops include
an
conversions,
AoE
but
under
they
you
also
that
include a lot
do
of other
damage
stuff.
while you're standing in it.
And
Like
there's a
those are
chance
the
of getting
only
the bonus
things
drops
that matter.
proportional to the mods that are on the monster.
And those
For
are the
example,
only
if the
things you have
monster
to play
has
around.
two, mods on it, then it has 2 chances to get a bonus.
And
If it
enemies
has
that
4
explode.
mods, it has 4 chances to get a bonus. And the individual
There are a lot of
mods have
enemies that
higher
explode.
chances where I believe like the more difficult ones, like for example, if there's one that's similar to one of the old Pantheon mods in that it does, like it evokes some, god who comes and smites you, for example, then it is significantly higher. There's a significantly higher chance that it's going to have a special drop here. And what you find is when a monster has, the
about
conversions of all of
Ruthless.
the really big mods in it, it's a hard fight. That results in there being a very high chance of one of these special drops, which is potentially a conversion or potentially one of the other ones we haven't spoken about yet. And this results in a thing where you have a lot of incentive to fight rare monsters, a lot of incentive to fight hard rare monsters, but you don't feel that you can assess a monster beforehand and then try to min-max what your exact party composition should be in order to get the maximum rewards from that fight. We've also tried to smooth this out a bit more. Like the thing in the past where you could potentially, under the right circumstances, get dozens and dozens of divines from a monster, and then everyone else feels like they're getting nothing, wasn't great. So we're trying to make sure that there are still spikes, but it's a bit less spiky than before. There's a bit more spread across all of the different things, and a lot of the bad options are a bit better now.
A lot more variety too, it sounds like. Is this something you've considered doing to map bosses as well? Like, map bosses have definitely gotten better over time in terms of reward and more interesting, which I like. But it still seems like,
What's this?
in a lot of
I don't know.
cases, they
What
can
does
feel
it
a
say
little
in the
sparse.
title and in the game?
It's worth looking into. Yeah, we've been focusing this cycle on trying to get
This is
the
the next
monster mods into a good
Path of
place
Exile
to
League.
scrub
They're
all
just
the arch
revealing
nemesis off everything.
what it's about and some new skills and stuff. Reworks.
Feels good.
Unfortunately, right now it's
those
the
power
Q&A
washing videos. It's like that.
with Ziggy D.
Yeah, I'll get my gurney out and hose off the arch nemesis filth.
Always cringe.
Oh dear. Definitely threw me there. A lot of people in chat asked, how will Headhunter work with the new monster mods?
Okay, this is the first question we're expecting. There are way more mods now, and that means Headhunter players that are getting
I'm
a
just
lot of
waiting for
mods
them to
can
get
now
past this
plate
and start talking
previously,
about the
because there were
Ruthless mode, which
relatively
is
few
new.
arch nemesis mods. I mean, there were still dozens. to be
Apparently it's
fair,
like,
but there were
from what
fewer.
they
Once
described.
you've got the more active, you
Hold on, let
can't
me
get more. Whereas here there are far
use their
more,
babbling again.
far more upper end
It's like they
These do less than the arch nemesis.
they reduced the amount of drops from monsters, so it's harder to get anything, which isn't necessarily a good thing because it's already impossible to find anything.
You pick which
And they made the support gems that you link with your active gems so that they do more damage and do different things. They made them drop only, so you can only get them from farming and you can't buy them from the NPCs. So I think if that's what the mode is,
I'm pretty sure the flask conversion is gone.
it just sounds like it's gonna be super annoying and shit.
Yeah, yeah, it'll flash with regular flask drops.
That's why I want them to talk about it. Because what I was hoping was that it would just slow the game down, gameplay wise. But
I don't think
it's not gonna do that.
Do you know that?
They there's nothing they can do to.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly discussed
Do
it,
that.
but we want to kind of get a vanilla experience here of how many rare monster mods is appropriate, and an issue with feedback is if there are ways to juice it up, and then people say there are too many mods. We don't know if they necessarily had that active, so we'll consider it for the future. But this has been year of rare monster mods, so let's just try this new system and see if people appreciate the changes, and then we can look at further changes to it.
It's been a wild ride, Chris.
Mm.
All right. Recently you swapped kind of Divine and Exalted Orbs around. Now that we've had a league with the various changes surrounding these currencies, I'd like to know what were the goals of effectively swapping Divines and Exalts, and how effective have the changes been?
Well, the goals were that exalts were used more for crafting, that someone would actually consider taking an item and using an exalted orb to get another mod that is random. That's happening now, a lot more than it was before. Secondly, we wanted it to be harder to divine items, not just because we're mean, but because it makes well-rolled uniques more valuable. Previously, because divines were really accessible, well, relatively accessible, it meant that if you have a really rolled unique, it didn't really feel that special because someone can slam a few divines into it to get something like that. Now there is quite a wide variance of stuff. Like look at something like Brass Dome, for example, where the
Yeah,
the
the
worst
the
versions
Q&A
make it
is
worth quite a lot
usually
less than the
just
really good
very
ones. And
specific
that's more
meta
fun
stuff
because
that
then you
only
find
people who
something
are
that's just a much better
current
version
really give a
of
shit
something
about.
that someone else has that's worth less, and you feel good about that. These goals were achieved, right? Like it certainly is harder to divine items. It is easier to exalt them. The economy
Can't play with
survived.
that movement
Life
speed. You're
moves
so
on.
slow.
We'll continue to make broad changes whenever we feel like it that affect the economy, but it's sometimes good to just cause a bit of a shift in how people value items so you don't get entrenched values. You don't get people believing, oh, this item is 6x forever. It changes because the game changes.
So for the standard players that are still coping with their stash full of exalts because they didn't convert them over in time,
This is
you
like seriously like, oh, I had entirely all my money in Bitcoin and now it's worthless, right? Like diversify, right? Again, economics.
Chris is teaching multiple economics lessons today.
Path of Exile will set you up for life. Have a diversified portfolio of currency items.
Okay.
And not
It's
just
really,
currency. Keep some rares, keep some crafting stuff. Anyway,
yeah. I mean, yeah, you got to invest in some high-end, one-of-a-kind items, right?
some old skin maps, maybe alternate.
Oh
I
yeah.
found out I have this red beak on my account from the early race seasons. Like I'm talking, I logged in to do races back in 2013 to literally test they were working and got an alternate art red beak, and now it's worth a mirror in standard.
Wait, is it? I'm pretty sure I
Well,
have one of those.
well, I mean that
Nice.
was just with a quick search, but yeah. So invest in a variety of different items in your standard portfolio if you don't want to get wrecked by economic changes.
If only I played in standard, I'd be rich. It's so good. It's interesting to see some new Vase skills.
Nobody
It's only
plays in
been a
standard.
while.
Only
I'm trying to
weirdos play
look up
standard.
exactly when, and I think 3.3 Incursion was the last time, which was get ready, 17 leagues ago. So powerful, longer cooldown or like ultimate skills can make gameplay quite a bit more engaging, I think. And a lot of people love Val skills for that reason. It's certainly an underutilized skill category, though, not something you add new skills to all the time. So how do you decide then whether to make a skill a Val skill or just a regular skill that does a similar thing?
Well, if we're trying to come up with an ultimate skill, Val skills are ones that we have a control over you only using periodically, whereas regular skills, we generally don't put big cooldowns on them unless there's a bypassable thing. So if it's something where there's a good cooldown bypass mechanism, then it will probably be a regular skill.
Mm.
Now, the
See
thing we're doing with Val
that
skills here is we want to
that
buff
mindset
melee.
is why the
There
game
are a
doesn't
number
have
of
any
like
mechanics.
you may be thinking, wow, that's a lot of changes to melee, or you may be thinking, where are all the melee changes, depending on whether you happen to notice stuff. But the changes to endgame unique weapons affect melee. The Val skill stuff affects melee in a way
But
I'll discuss
that
in a
is the
second.
Diablo
There's a
2
bunch of other
mindset.
bits
And
pieces
this
like
game
melee
is Diablo
slashes
2.
being
It was
added
meant to be Diablo
as a
2.
mode on the
A
Passive
replacement
tree,
for Diablo
and we
2.
have some.
It
I'm
wasn't
not
meant
supposed
to
talk
be
about the details because it's secret.
Diablo
But
3.
you'll find there's some totem mastery that affects melee in an interesting way. So there's a
They
few bits and
just copy
pieces
pasted Diablo 2
that
pretty
together
much.
actually do make quite a cohesive set of melee buffs. But the theory with the Val ones is we targeted a set of weaker melee skills where previously, if the player is using that skill, they just do the damage they were doing. And rather than just saying, oh, we're going to give the skill a little bit more damage, which has various issues, we've created a Val version, which at face value means that every X attacks, you get to do a more powerful one, which is an indirect buff. But we've tried to design many of these Val skills so that they also directly buff the main version, like Val Cleave is an example, where if you're using Val Cleave occasionally, your cleaves themselves are more powerful. And so it's doing a more powerful attack sometimes and increasing the power of your other attacks the rest of the time. And because of the change where using the Val gem gives you the regular version of the skill, then there's no excuse not to be using Val Cleave if you were playing a Cleave character. And so overall, there are a lot of Val skills there that cause melee characters to be quite a lot more powerful. It also meant that we could, for example, target skills that we felt needed it. Now, when you see the patch notes in a little bit, you'll notice there's a small nerf to Lightning Strike, right? And you may be thinking, well, if we're trying to buff melee, what are you doing nerfing Lightning Strike? And the answer is it's far, 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 far better than the other melee skills. And so we're buffing the category, but that doesn't mean that every skill needs to come out entirely, entirely with additional damage on it. And so you'll find that melee overall is more powerful, but within the melee category, there's quite a lot more options available than there were before.
All right.
Of heavy strike. I
so,
want heavy
yeah,
strike.
like, Cleave's a little underutilized. +2 radius not enough. We'll just give it a mini headhunter. Well, that'll help. should do. Evolve skills then a concept that's likely to carry forth into Path of Exile 2 with its altered skill fit system even.
Yeah.
No
The
comment.
joke there is that at some point, like no,
Nice.
Cleave
Frozen
total
Legion
meme
is
skill,
pretty
or
big
was
news
at
as
least.
well. So to clarify for people who missed
And
the particular detail about
at
it,
some
it's,
point in
actually
some
a spell
league,
that summons
they
statues
buffed
that
Cleave,
never
and all they
attack
did
your
was they
weapon,
gave it
right?
+2
Yep. That's
Super
correct.
cool.
attack radius, which is
Stellar
like
attack. So you've done it now. There's nothing to stop
that was the
you
entire
from casting
patch.
a spell that shoots your bow's arrow or attack that casts a spell that then does another attack. So
Couldn't even give it more
is this
damage or
something you wanna
anything.
explore more potentially.
I'd say consider this as a hint at the way we're designing some Path of Exile 2 skills.
A little bit more going on. I like it. Very cool. We have a couple extra chat questions here. Oh, everyone was asking about divine shards. Yeah, I see your chat. I see you spamming divine shards. Okay, everyone wants to know: are divine shards going to be a thing? Chris.
They're called Chaos Orbs. Shards have problems. Okay, so we designed Path of Exile to get away from the concept of there being a homogeneous gold currency in games, right? And I understand every league we do, we introduce gold in it, but that's, you know, within the confines of that particular scope. But overall, in main Path of Exile, we want to make sure that the currency items have fluctuating values relative to each other. It's very important as part of the way that trade works. And so taking something like Divine Orbs that are the de facto currency for high-end trades and adding a granular proportional like divine sense thing is not something that we would do unless there was a good reason for it. And so we'd have no plans to add divine shards. We think it would potentially be negative. It's okay to use cheaper currency as the divine shards. Like you can take chaos orbs and turn them into divines through trade or other mechanisms. The value fluctuates, but that's what we want it to be doing.
All right. Booze Addicts asks, do the clones from the new skills count as minions? That'll be the Frozen Legion. I only ever saw them referred to as statues.
They do not. Yeah, so it's like Val Double Strike, for example.
The attack onto plane asks, does Valve Flicker attack one target multiple times? So does it have like boss applications then, or is it more about pack clear?
Can hit the same target more than once, so on a boss, every single target.
Yeah, against a single target, it will do every single hit against that target.
Very anime. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It is very anime, yes.
Let's talk crafting and league mechanics a little bit. So, challenge leagues in Path of Exile have always been a place for you guys to experiment with systems. Some of them intended to
Talk
go
about
core,
ruthless.
if they work out, for example, but otherwise, others are like never really intended to go core, and they're just specifically for that. But even in that case, I imagine there's a chance that they can give you some useful information to inform future design. So crafting systems have been a bit of a trend lately, I notice, with leagues, like Sentinel Recombinators, for example, and Lake of Calandra Mirroring. Some of these crafting systems end up being particularly liked by the players too. I think people really like the Recombinators. Are these sorts of new crafting systems designed with becoming core features in mind, or are they more experiments to explore future design possibilities? And is crafting systems something that you're keen to keep experimenting with?
We want to introduce something new in every league, a new way of getting items, or a new thing you can do with items. We found that if we leave it in the game just as a de facto thing, then you accumulate dozens and dozens and dozens of systems that create both power creep and complexity creep for the way the crafting works. And that's good. Path of Exile is meant to have that stuff, and power creep is natural, and there's no big problem there. But we have found that introducing stuff like recombinators and then turning it off until we've had a good think about how it fits in is probably safer. Like a lot of expectations with Harvest would have been reduced if we hadn't reintegrated it into the game before we were ready to.
Power creep isn't actually natural.
Of that. And so with the mist from Lake of Calandra,
they've created the power creep themselves.
We're looking for ways that we can bring them back. And we do plan to continue to introduce systems like this, some of which will stick around, some of which won't. An example is Sanctified Relics in the Sanctum offer a lot of character power, and that's a Sanctum-specific thing. We don't expect that
Power creep only applies to
maybe we make it core, maybe we don't, maybe we keep them,
WoW
maybe we don't.
style
But they're a thing for
MMOs.
let you
Like not here.
that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. There are a lot of things in there which let you push your build further.
The only reason there's any power creep is because
It may be that
They
it comes
keep
to
introducing new
later,
mechanics
and we are looking for ways
that
to bring stuff back. Like, I don't know if
let
this
you
is
add
actually
like
a thing,
more
but at least in our
mods
planning,
or more
one of the
powerful
things that the
mods
monster
to your
boss
your
really cool,
items,
you know how they have those special
and they
drops
keep
that we were
buffing
speaking about a few
everything.
minutes ago. One of the things that they could
Ugh.
drop was the mist that mirrors from Calandra, for example, the one that gives you the 2 currency items. I don't know what form that will be in. If it's in 320, we're still sorting out the details of some of the exotic ones like
What a
that.
disaster!
But that's an
Did you
example
cut yourself?
of us taking a system that was
Yeah, we'll
used as
see.
a reward mechanic for a league
It'll
and then
probably suck,
making it a rare reward
but
from another system in the game.
Cool. Speaking of things that
I usually shave like
potentially
once a
can come
month,
back in the future,
and it's just
is there any word on
I
ultimatum?
just hate doing it with the trimmer
Ultimatum
on the
is split
electric
into 2
razor. It
pieces.
just
There's the
sucks
boss fights with
ass.
the uniques. They're back in the game, as of like last league, I think, or the one before. Time is
Especially since
blur.
it's getting
And then
it's
the actual
getting
ultimatum
worn.
mechanic. Now we have
So
a plan for the
like
ultimatum mechanic.
that's the
and
problem
we
right now.
mentioned
It
there is a plan
literally
for a while,
can't
and
cut
that
my
plan's
beard
not due
anymore.
yet, but it is coming at some point until it
So
changes. Having said that, the offer/deferral system in Sanctum does feel a lot like it. This is where we say, here is a thing, or you can keep going in order to double it, essentially, but with quite a lot more doubling going on. And so players who liked the risk of ultimatum will
it was
certainly
either
like
this
that
or
mechanic.
a new electric razor.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see the parallel there. Very briefly, just 2 small questions on Ruthless. How has the player interest and reception been to the Ruthless Alpha from your perspective?
The alpha testers are very positive. That's really good to see. I'm glad to see they're enjoying it. And hopefully, those who couldn't get into the alpha and who are interested in that mode can have a chance to check it out when it launches alongside 320.
All right. Is Ruthless a mode that you want to keep making changes to long term, like rebalancing skills specifically for the mode, for example?
We will do some Ruthless specific skill balance. Currently, the focus was on getting fundamentals in place, like getting the mode to function. And then, if we find time later, we'll be able to use it to make whatever changes are needed on specific skills. And to some extent, with as you know, with the way Path of Exile works, if there's a skill that's dominant and somewhat trivializing stuff, then we won't have any qualms about ruthlessly nerfing that in that mode. Now, there's a fundamental philosophy difference, right? A player who's playing the main game will get upset if we nerf their skills. And this is because it's the way they like to play Path of Exile. If we just decide we hate minion characters one day, then all these people who come to Path of Exile to enjoy playing minion characters as a reliable way they can engage with the game would be upset that now they can't do the thing they like. In Ruthless, all bets are off. We will make whatever changes we feel like, and it will stay hard, and you will have to adapt. And, you know, the Ruthless players are big boys. They can deal with this. And it should be fine. So we will make some skill-specific changes, and very likely that those changes are not the same as balance changes that we do in the core game. In the core game, we want to make sure all the archetypes are viable and there's good diversity and that kind of stuff, but in Ruthless, we have other objectives.
Yeah, they're definitely
I'm going to spam you with some uncategorized random questions from chat now.
they're definitely launching
Kyle
Ruthless
MC
to
asks, how does
beta
quantity
test
and
for
rarity affect the Sanctum?
PoE 2,
And
I
I'll
imagine.
enter that.
'Cause
Another question.
I
that's
know
also
he
asked,
wants to do
map
that,
odds don't
'cause
affect
that's
the
how
Sanctum
PoE
either,
1
it's a
was.
separate zone.
Or
Your
like in
map
the
odds do
beginning,
not affect the
PoE
Sanctum.
was a lot slower.
Quantity and rarity on your character will affect your drops you get from the monsters.
It
I
was
believe.
very, very different.
There are monsters in the Sanctum.
So
that you can
I
kill,
mean, they
and
ruined the
drop
game
items, So
themselves.
it's not like, you know, the goal is that when you're mapping, it doesn't reduce the amount of item drops you're getting by going and playing in the Sanctum. You do get drops, and those monsters are technically unique monsters, so technically they're pretty juiced, and quantum rarity do affect that. So going into the Sanctum, killing some monsters is roughly similar to killing monsters in the map that you came from, plus all the Sanctum rewards on top.
Nice. Demarius asks, how endgame is the new mechanic? So that'd be Sanctum. Does that encounter that on like the first beach as you start the campaign, or is it kick in later?
Yep, kicks in right at the beginning. So basically, you start doing your first Sanctum at level like 2 or whatever. You know, as you get into the coast, and you probably won't get very far in those Sanctum runs, but it's a good opportunity to start learning. Start accumulating some relics and so on, and you'll need them because later on it gets really hard. There are some things in the Sanctum, like the special endgame uniques, that can only be dropped if you are very high in maps, because they're very, very powerful pinnacle things. But yeah, it does play throughout the entire campaign.
Great. El Swego asks, if Soul Take is going to be so insanely rare, what does this mean for Kingmaker, the item that you can make out of Soul Taker?
I'm just going to smile. We thought of that one.
Oh, okay. Mystery.
Maybe it's been buffed as well.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Something
no.
to be revealed potentially then, I'm getting chat. Will our Star Forges or Line Eyes Glares sitting in Standard be buffable to their Headhunter tier strengths with a Divine Orb?
Yep.
No, Heather, are you gonna
But we had to do that
Offer me some
because it
arts
was
for my
fair
Twitch
and
channel.
because of divination cards that you could have been hoarding and all the other things. So yeah, you get some free ridiculous items in standard if you had diversified into them.
Standard chat trade is exploding right now. Excellent.
Someone says stonks. That's great.
Okay. FDXPO asks, with endgame unique weapons becoming more rare, what about their respective divination cards like Starforges, for example?
Yes, we are adjusting the divination cards. This means in standard, the old divination cards are now worth more.
All right. Man with Hat, any plans to decouple melee from buffs granted by totems, Ancestral Protector, or War Chief?
This is actually a hot topic internally. I don't know the answer. Like, I think it's the case where our designers acknowledge this is a problem and are looking for solutions, but maybe we've doubled down on it a little bit in this one because of that totem mastery I mentioned before. You'll see what I mean.
Wait and see. Doug Izzle asks, will Ruthless launch on console at League launch too?
I believe so. Yeah.
Great. Lots of ultimatum questions, which we already asked. Theory Crafter and many other people ask, is Reforge keep prefix / suffix coming back in some shape or form? Speaking of things coming back.
I'm not aware of it coming back. No, sorry.
Okay. And is there any ETA on the next mystery box release from Forest Bishop?
It's likely to be at the League launch or within a day or so of it.
All right. Spooky asks, Chris, can you please share your current thoughts on the loss of the historic buff to loot? There you go. That's a big one.
So this is one of those tricky things where, like, we feel people completely misunderstood what is there, and like we didn't want to go on a big rant and try to correct people, but we posted some numbers at some point during the league and then left it. But it boils down to this: if you're a regular player playing regular content, as we can see based on like looking at what regular players are doing, and by regular I mean people in red maps, then there is no loss of anything. It's better than it was before. Like Sentinel is higher than it was previously, and people didn't believe us. They said doubt. They weren't happy with that, so we just stopped trying to push the point. If you were one of those groups that were juicing stuff to insane degrees with 6-person parties and all the crazy stuff going on and using exactly the right league mechanics with exactly the right stuff, then yeah, absolutely there was a nerf there. And for some reason, the community like feeling about this was that we nerfed the average person. Like, it's a little bit of a Robin Hood thing where we tried to take from the rich and give to the poor, and the communication around the whole thing was poorly done. We didn't explain it, like patch note it correctly. We didn't communicate about it. We didn't really understand the nature of the changes fully ourselves. But where we got it to with the buffs we did was better than where it was before, unless you were doing one of the crazy juice situations. And so it was frustrating for us because we felt that the miscommunication had kind of the miscommunication is our fault, but we felt the whole situation kind of ran away and caused people to really hate the loot situation more than they should have done. Anyway, I think that this has taught us a lot of lessons about communication, but there's no need to further improve drops related to that. The amount of currency and stuff that you're getting, and uniques, in fact, especially uniques that you're getting for regular gameplay involving a variety of different leagues, does exceed what it was in 3.18. It's just that if you're playing the crazy Imperium style stuff as we describe it, then you're certainly getting less, and that was an intentional part of the change.
Has there been some sort of change to the way that you're like approaching the reveals and the patch noting and stuff? Maybe like with how you're describing some things, because you don't like historically you've never revealed everything. Like there's a lot of stuff that's considered not in patch notable changes, for example. Has that changed at all over time?
Historically, we've tried very hard not to talk about drop rate changes. If we feel that something drops too often, we'll just change it. And for decades, well, not decades, but more than a decade, we have followed that policy. Having said that, we should have talked about the changes to the quantity and rarity bonuses from different league content, because it does affect decisions people are making. There was stuff before that was really juicy and everyone wanted to play that, and we tried to make it more fair so the leagues are roughly equal, and that's something that should have been communicated more clearly, and we certainly learned the lesson there. And the lack of communication there was not malicious, it was entirely just like ignorance on our part. There was miscommunications internally. I missed the memo almost literally, and that meant that it wasn't as much part of the marketing as it should have been. And we certainly have tried very hard this time not to make the same mistake again.
All right. Good to hear. Thank you very much for the insights, Chris, and thank you for spending this time together with us, the Q&A. I'll let you get to it, and we'll let them release the patch notes so that everyone can have a read. Thank you very
All right.
much.
Enjoy, everyone. Thanks so much.
See you later, everyone.
All right. Is that it? Where's my patch notes? None of these things unlocked. The Twitch drops didn't unlock either. I don't know what was going on there. There's the Twitch drops, but the patch notes still not up. Garbage, 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 garbage. Bullet League. What are these guys saying? Should have had Twitch chat up. Alright, come on. Patch notes? Oh, just have to sit there and update until the patch note appears. Maybe it's on the website. Not yet. Patch notes. December 1. Added Japanese language support. I follow them on Twitter though. Patch notes. Did they literally just show one skill? Is that it? And it felt like a skill that was already in the game. Come on. Post the patch notes, all you gotta do is hit the button. Come on. Game news. Patch notes. Bad gateway. Error host. B. Come on, your website went down, guys. Please try again in a few minutes. Oh, come. The thing is, I do like Cleave, but it just fucking sucks ass. Don't download? What do you mean don't download? Implying I don't already have it downloaded. I'm trying to read the patch notes. Come on. But yeah, next Friday we'll be playing Path of Exile. Come on. Puke yields no results? No, of course not. He's not puking. He's vomiting. Escaped Chinese Foxconn worker GF. I have no idea what that means at all. This is what we're gonna be playing. This guy, Slayer. I actually don't know how to make a spellcaster. The spellcasters are so weird. place with the suicide nets. I think there's a lot of places with those, but I guess they have that specifically on that con. Very dangerous to have this refresh button right above the Facebook button. Come on. Oh, someone did this. Someone put it all in pastebin. Added a new optional game mode for Path of Exile, Ruthless. This is an additional character creation flag alongside Hardcore and Solo Self-Found that allows you to opt in to extreme item scarcity and various other changes. Challenges will not be enabled in Ruthless versions of the Sanctum League. Yeah, whatever. Ocean Legion, Volcanic Fissure. A new intelligence support gem, Cursed Ground. Supported skills create cursed ground. Enemies on the cursed ground from a supported skill are cursed with that hex. Hex Bloom. Hexes from supported skills are transferred to all enemies within a certain distance when hexed enemy dies. Vol Cleave, Vol Flicker Strike, Vol Blade Flurry, Vol Venom Gyre, Vol Molten Strike, Vol Caustic Arrow, Vol Volcanic Fissure, and Vol Smite. I don't really like any of that. I don't want to read everything, but because they've already talked about most of it. Curses. Currently, hex builds are at their weakest against monsters where they matter the most, and at their strongest where they matter the least. This is partly because hexes have hidden penalties which reduce their effectiveness when fighting unique monsters and pinnacle bosses. Currently 33% and 66% respectively. It's normal for these monsters to have various hidden penalties, as noting every single one would create a lot of clutter in their mod descriptions. Players can reasonably expect these monsters to be more difficult to fight, so in general, showing the entire list of penalties is not very necessary. It's also not necessary to have these penalties at all. However, the penalty against hexes is an outlier because it's more significant compared to other hidden penalties. Because it is so substantial while also being hidden from players, it is unlikely to be compensated for during build creation and creates a notable disadvantage for hex builds. We have removed both of these penalties so that hexes will be consistently effective against all monsters in the game. Specifics: Pinnacle bosses, map bosses, incursion architects, betrayal targets, breach lords, and other no longer have 33% or 66% less effect of curses on them respectively. Another issue that we feel undermines hex builds is the Doom mechanic. We designed Doom with the goal of making self-cast hexes more effective than other more trivial applications of hexes, such as the Blasphemy and Hex Touch support gems. The Doom mechanic was somewhat successful in its goal, but came at the cost of adding a lot of complexity to hex-related mechanics. We're removing the Doom mechanic, and as a consequence we'll be making several other changes to mechanics that previously interacted with Doom. For example, all stats that reference Doom have been replaced with other cursed-themed stats. Curse Mastery that gave 20% chance for hexes to cast. Hexes you cast which can gain Doom to be applied with maximum Doom, and 30% increased mana reservation efficiency, blah blah blah, have been replaced. Now a much larger amount of mana reservation efficiency for curse auras on the passive tree. Two new masteries have taken their place. The first provides you take 40% reduced extra damage from critical strikes by cursed enemies, while the second provides recover 1% of life when you curse a non-cursed enemy and recover 1% of mana when you curse a non-cursed enemy. Existing curse passive skills have been fully reworked. There are now 6 curse clusters on the passive tree. The Vampirism cluster has moved location on the passive tree to make space for a new curse cluster and to become more accessible to the witch starting location. Whisper of Doom notable passive skill continues to give you can apply an additional curse. It now has a much larger selection of small passive skills leading to this notable witch brew. 5% increased effect of your curses, blah 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 blah. Alright, they just removed Doom. Who cares? But it's weird, right? To have hidden like penalties like that. Because there's no it's not necessary. I don't understand. Like, for what reason would you need to have a hidden mechanic that makes a curse weaker on a boss? Design-wise, like, I can't think of any. Except maybe you want to mitigate, like, the necessity to have a curse. Because you might end up feeling like you need to have a curse that reduces the damage the boss does, for example, like regardless of what you are. That's kind of the way curses are already. Like, you feel that you need to have a curse. It's a big issue. And again, it's just because the game is so simplistic that they just can't do anything. Because you have like cast when damage taken, for example. So you just take that and then you put a curse on it. Even as a melee character, you're gonna put a curse that's gonna make the enemy weaker to physical damage, for example. And you put it on a totem, and the totem you just throw it down and it just keeps cursing. Or you put it on cast when damage taken, or something like that. Because not having the curse is just too much, like, it's too detrimental. Because curses are like the strongest. Like, if you look at the curses, they look super weak. Warlord's Mark. Vulnerability. Yeah, this. Even here it doesn't even look weak. First enemies take 30 to 39% increased physical damage. And they also have a chance of getting bleeding. But 30 to 39% increased damage taken is actually insane, because in here, when you take things like this, like 50% increased elemental damage, every single time you take something that gives you increased elemental damage, that gives you relatively less of an increase every single time. So eventually, if you have like 400% damage increase already, taking another 20% isn't really going to do much. But then on the other hand, if you make enemies take 10% more damage, then that's the equivalent of getting 40% more damage on top of that. Like it multiplies it all up. And then that's 40%, so that's gonna be 100% more damage. Yeah, hexes. Cluster jewels. The Occultist's Profane Bloom notable ascendancy passive no longer provides your hexes can affect hexproof enemies. It now provides cursed enemies you or your minions kill have a 50% chance to explode, dealing a quarter of their maximum life as chaos damage. What, so they can't be immune to hexes anymore? I mean, that's good, because you had to have that. Like, you couldn't play a hex build if you didn't play Occultist, because they would be immune to hexes sometimes. Mitigating monster life regeneration. So now they're adding more things so that we can mitigate monster life by having something that reduces monster life regeneration. It's like it's funny that they have this roguelike league, because the game could just as well be a roguelike. You could add all of these mechanics to a roguelike and it wouldn't really change the skill level of the game. Problem: the recovery provided by the consecrated ground you create causes life regeneration to also recover energy shield to you and your allies on Pious Path is significant on its own. So having 50% increased effect of consecrated ground you create on top of this feels overboard. Okay, you nerfed it. Holy shit. They're still dealing with Sirius's arena being a fucking visual clusterfuck. Trying to fix it. they're never gonna fix it. Holy crap. Bug fixes. Okay. Well, I guess that's pretty much it, I guess. Well, that'll be that. They woke me up this morning and the day's been shit, so... We're gonna stop the stream there. Try to get some work done tomorrow. Anyway. Later. Bye-bye.